Welcome to step 3 of the Cornrow French Braid style with weave. In this step, I will be offering you hair advice to achieve flawless French braids with 7 easy tips. Tip number 1, moisturized hair. It is extremely important that before you braid your hair is already moisturized. If your hair is already dry before you install your extensions, once it's time to take down your extensions, your hair will be even drier than what you originally started with. Dry hair always leads to breakage simply because your hair has no moisture to ensure elasticity when you are manipulating it for your hairstyles. The number one reason is because it leads to breakage, so that's why you want to make sure your hair is moisturized. And the second reason is because when you use hair gel to style your hair, if your hair is dry, the gel will flake and give you a look that you really didn't desire. So make sure before you actually braid your hair and style your hair that your hair has already been thoroughly moisturized. Tip number 2, thick and thin braids. Typically speaking, my braids are pretty average sized, and the average size of a braid is anywhere between 1/2 inch to 1 inch in size. So if you feel as if my braids are too big for your taste, that is your preference. If my braids are too small for your taste, that is also your preference. Braids range in sizes from extremely tiny to extremely big, so it's all about the desired look that you want to achieve. If you are braiding your hair and you feel as if your braids are too thin, you probably parted too much hair for your braids, or you probably didn't add enough hair to your braids. Also, if you feel as if your braids are too big, maybe you've parted your parts a little bit too small, or maybe you've added more hair than what you actually like. So the size of your braids is up to what you want to see on your hair. Tip number 3, practice. Practicing is my most important tip that I have to offer you. It is also the most overlooked tip of them all. If you do not practice doing your hair, how can you become great at doing your hair? When I first started off doing my hair, it took a lot of fails for me to get to the point that I am today. If I did not practice, and if it wasn't for practicing, I would not be able to do such a good job on my own hair. So please do not get discouraged if on your first try it is a total fail. It is supposed to be the worst on your first try. You want to continue to work until you become better at it. But if you quit, you will never get better at it. So this is my best tip that I have to offer you because it is most important. If you don't practice, how can you do any styles? How can you even do the braiding technique that I have taught? So continue to work on your hair. And the most important thing, you have to remember that in order to get perfect at what you do, you have to practice at it. Tip number 4, parting your hair. Parting your hair appropriately is extremely important when doing your cornrow extensions. If you notice, the front of your head or the front of your hairline is usually a lot longer and a lot more space than the back of your head. So when you are parting your hair, as you gradually near the back of your head, your parts need to become a little bit more thinner than what you originally started with. The reason why is because if you parted a section of hair perfectly in size all the way to the back of your head, eventually you will run out of space in the back of your head, so the braids will kind of hang off to the side or over your ears, and that is not a good look. So when you are parting your hair, you want to make sure that the part you start off with gradually becomes a little bit thinner as you near the back of your head, so that every single one of your braids can be braided directly to the back of your head. Tip number 5, braiding your hairline. When you begin to braid your hair, you want to make sure that the beginning of your braid is as close to the beginning of your hairline as possible. If you can notice, I probably have about 1/4 of an inch of hair that's kind of exposed where my braid starts. That's perfectly fine. You want to aim as close to your hairline as possible because if not, all of your braids will begin in the middle of your head and it will not look so good. So when you're braiding your hair and you notice that your braid seems to be pulled back just a little bit too far, simply restart and adjust your braid so that it starts at the beginning of your hairline. The closer a braid starts to the beginning of your hairline, the better a braid looks. Tip number 6, braid designs. When you are braiding your hair and you want designs, as simple as it sounds and as simple as it is, you simply want to part your hair in the design that you would like your hair to go. So if you would like zigzag braids, simply part your hair in zigzag parts to achieve the look that you would like. I will be teaching you how to do a basic cornrow French braid with weave, so I will simply be braiding my braids straight to the back. If you would like to switch it up, or if you would like some braids slanted, just part in a direction that you would like. Tip number 7, even braid length. Whether your braids are short or whether your braids are long like mine, it is very easy to overlook this tip simply because as you're braiding, you really don't notice until the very end. So if you can imagine this for a moment, I will explain to you why this tip is important. When you are braiding your hair, especially on the sides, you have a shorter distance to cover on your head. So the ends of your braids will be longer. Say for instance, you're braiding the middle of your head. You have a longer distance to cover down your head, so the ends of the braids will be a little bit shorter. So if you were to braid your hair at the exact same point on the weave, all the way to the back, the finished look would be like an upside down U, just because of the difference you have to cover in order to finish that braid. So the longer you have to braid your hair, the shorter the ends will be. And the least amount of time you have to braid, the longer the ends will be. So in order to make sure that the ends of your braids are even, I will show you this simple tip to check. What you want to do is grab all of your braids. Now, instead of grabbing your braids to the side and checking to make sure they're even, they will not be even because you aren't evenly distributing the hair to check. So right now, if I were to cut these braids even just by simply moving it to the side, when I rest the braids behind me, they will look uneven. So what you want to do to make sure your braids are aligned perfectly is to lay the braids behind your head as flat as possible. Once you do that, you're going to smooth the braids down in a downward motion straight behind you and lift the braids up. So I'm just smoothing the braids down as flat as possible. And then I'm going to lift it up directly over my head and hold that point there. So I'm going to move it in front of me to show you where I'm at. So once you do that, you're just going to straighten the braids out a little bit more and continue to go up to the ends. So as you can see, my braids are a little bit uneven, but it's not a big deal. If these lengths bother you and it's not as perfect as you would like, what you want to do is grab the braid that is uncomfortably too long for you, and I'm going to grab this braid and fix this one. So you want to take your other hand and hold the point on the braid at the point of how long you want the braid to go. So where I'm holding this braid now, I'm just going to let the rest of my braids go. And I know that's how long I want the braid to actually be, so I will snip this point of the braid. So once you cut your braid, you will notice that the end of the braid is pretty straight and blunt, and most times when it's cut this way, it will begin to unravel. So what I do is I take this braid down just a little bit and I'm going to trim it to a point. So once you take it down, you're going to grab your scissors and you can start on either side, and I'm just going to cut as far as I've went down all the way up to that tip of that point, because that's how long I want my braid to be. After you do that, braid it down to the bottom and test the lengths of your braids once more. So now you're going to put the braids behind your head, smooth it down, Lift your braids up. Bring it in front of you. Smooth it the rest of the way and check your length once more. So as you can see, one is just a little bit smaller than the pack, and I'm gonna leave it as is, but what you can do is do the same method by cutting and rebraiding to make sure they're all the length that you would like. So now that I have walked you through 7 easy tips for your French braid cornrows, continue to apply the hair advice that I have given you until your entire head is finished. In the next step, I will show you how to curl and seal the ends of your cornrow extensions.